Fine.
Okay, I'm fine as well. How are you, my sister?
I'm good, and you, sir?
I'm good. Big boss, how are you?
Nervous. How are you?
Okay, yeah, so far I'm good. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Namibia. So welcome back to the Government Information Center. My name is Angela Situmeko, and I'll be your host for today. So as we all know, today is a special day, namely Day of the African Child. So we celebrate this day yearly on the 16th of June, and it was initiated by the Organization of African Unity in 1991. Today we remember the Soweto Uprising, in particular the black students of Soweto, South Africa, who lost their lives in the fight for bettering education for the black child. So today in studio, I am joined by three youths, namely Ms. Christofina Magogo. Welcome to the studio. Thank you. And then we have Mr. Eli Kasai as well. Welcome. With us also, we have Ms. Joyce Wanja. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
And later on, we are expecting a call from Ms. Donata Shivoro, a control social worker from the Ministry of Gender, Equality, Poverty Eradication, and Social Welfare. So going back in the topic, namely Day of the African Child, I'd like to ask you, Kasai, can you give us a short background on on this auspicious occasion?
The commemoration of the Day of the African Child is mainly to recall the 1976 uprisings in Soweto when a group of young high school learners protesting against apartheid-inspired education resulted in the killing of some of these young unarmed protesters by police officials. The Day of the African Child has been celebrated every year since 1991, when it was first initiated by the Organization of African Unity. In addition to honoring those who participated in the event, it also raises awareness of the continuing need to improve education provided to African children.
Wow, that was quite insightful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Joyce, do you mind telling us why is it important for Africans as a whole to celebrate the African child?
So I think that back then, Africans as a whole, they were forced, especially in South Africa, they were forced to learn a white man's language. And of course, back then, me as an African child, I'm expected to be the key to the future, right? Now, how can I be the key to the future if education is being brought forth to me in a language that I don't understand, that of course I have to be forced to learn? So basically the main reason behind this is that besides any other reasons why we celebrate African Child's Day as a whole, is that it's actually the quality of education which addresses our needs as Africans.
Thank you very much for that answer. So I would just like to remind the viewers that you can participate in our conversation today by joining us on YouTube, which is on MICT Namibia, as well as on Facebook on the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology Namibia. You can also call us directly on the number 061 400 397. So you can call us in on the number 061 400 397 as well. So next, we'd like to ask Asai again. Does the Day of the African Child provide occasions or activities for different stakeholders?
Yes, it does. The Day of the African Child provides an occasion for governments, UN agencies, international organizations, NGOs, civil society organizations, and other relevant stakeholders to renew their ongoing engagements to protect and assist children that have been affected by harmful practices. This is accomplished through organizations of specific activities and programs to prevent, protect, and assist children who are at risk or have been affected by harmful practices.
Okay, so when we talk about harmful practices, Joyce, what exactly are we talking about from the point of view of a child?
So we're talking about all behaviors, attitudes, and or practices which negatively affect the fundamental rights of women and girls especially, or let me say children, such as their right to life, for instance, their education, their health, their physical integrity, and their dignity as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And so this, I'd like to ask Christofina. So what are some of the persistent challenges that the children encounter on eliminating harmful practices amongst them?
Thank you very much for the question. So first of all, when we have a practice which is child marriage, right?
Yes.
This takes place without the child's decision, right? Most of the times it's the parent who decides for them. They're not involved into this life-changing decision. And then another thing is COVID-19. During COVID-19, not so good people took advantage of the time to enact harmful practices on children, such as female genital mutilation, which is not so common in Namibia, rather in northern parts of Africa. And then we also had child marriages, and then we had a skyrocketing increase in the number of teenage pregnancy after lockdown. So that was basically it.
Okay, seeing that you touched on some of these harmful social and cultural practices, so both for Joyce and Christina, what type of examples could you give? For example, you mentioned child marriages. What other examples that could be harmful for teenagers and so forth, that you've encountered amongst your friends or just heard about and so forth?
So I think that child marriage goes hand in hand with forced marriage, because at the end of the day, you know, once a child is involved in child marriage, let me say for instance, it's a tradition, right? And in the society where you are, in the environment, the whole environment is at it. So you as a child have no say on this, right?
Yes.
So you are expected to follow it because it's basically seen as tradition, right? Now, I think that forced marriage goes hand in hand with child marriage, and it's something that has to be eliminated because it's a harmful practice which is robbing children of their childhood, because now you're a child and you're married and you're being robbed of your childhood basically because you can't play with other kids. Sometimes your education is also limited. You have to be home taking care of a husband, and you're just robbed of most of the things. I think it also denies them the chance to determine their future and threaten the well-being of individuals, families, and the society as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Christofina, any?
So I'd say psychological effects and well-being of this child. So obviously they haven't been included in the decision making like I mentioned earlier. And when child marriages occur, this reduces the child's socialization and interaction level. So obviously in society, it's placed that children and adults have a specific barrier, and this child is appreciated or accepted by society as an adult, thus other children stay away from them. And I'd like to also point out that in many of these child marriages, it's not a happy marriage. It's usually a marriage filled with violence, sexual harassment, and this is where we also get gender-based violence.
Yes, so thank you very much for that. And sticking with you, Christofina, what progress has been done in Namibia to eliminate the harmful practices, do you feel?
Thank you very much for the question. So in Namibia, we have policies which, let me just refer to my questions.
Okay, not a
I mean
problem.
to my answers, pardon me. Okay, so Namibia has eliminated child marriage by enacting a law under the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006, whereby it prohibits solemnization of marriage of a boy who is less than 21 years of age and a girl who is less than 18 years of age. And I'd like to move on to Africa as well with the same question. We have the ACERWC, which decided to make a general comment
Okay, you
on
can call now.
female genital mutilation. Thank you.
Okay. What are your recommendations? What are recommendations you think are pivotal to member of states in order to terminate these harmful practices? Anybody can give me input on that. What do you think the government or stakeholders can do in order to help the teenagers and adolescents in eliminating or tackling these harmful practices?
I think that we need more literacy programs to raise more awareness. And in this case, it shouldn't just be with the child, right? It should be with the adults as well, because it's the child and the parent we are talking about. So at the end of the day, we need to, the literacy programs need to involve both the adults and the young. So I think that parents should be led aware that our generation, our children's generation, is not the same as ours. And of course, some things, some harmful practices, our parents pass them on to us because they feel like it's tradition, it's culture, but then they have to understand that we are not in the same time, we are not the same generation. And children have to be alerted that once they are in such societies whereby harmful practices are common, they should be aware, as it was mentioned, that we have stakeholders, right? They should be aware of where to go, who they can reach out to. I mean, their voices have to be heard. So let me say I'm in an environment whereby the whole society is together on this, they're standing on one, so I have no say on it as a child. If I have to go through this marriage, I have to, and I have no say in it. So you can always go to the NGOs, go to Lifeline, Childline, they also have a toll-free number, of course, and you can also visit the police. I mean, visit anybody if your society is standing one in this.
I think that's a very important aspect that you made there, how important it is to give the African child a voice, to voice their opinions, to voice their troubles, because we're never going to be able to tackle any of these harmful practices if we don't listen to the people who are affected by them. So that being said, we do have a caller on the line. That is namely Ms. Donata Shivoro, who is the control social worker at the Ministry of Gender, Equality and Poverty Eradication and Social Welfare. Okay, so we're gonna hold on until Ms. Donata is able to join us. So I'd just like to ask, how did you guys celebrate the day at your, how did you spend the day at your respective schools or at home or with the families?
So I gave my family members a poem and on the African child, and yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting.
I celebrated it with my friends. We just spoke about how we are very privileged to have what we have now because of what happened in Soweto in 1976.
Okay.
Celebrated with my family, just the bride home, and celebrated the
Okay.
day.
So that is nice to know that you are being appreciated, that you are using this day to have productive discussions with your friends and so forth. So apart from that, what advice would you give, for example, to your peers when it comes to staying away from these harmful practices or peer pressure and so forth?
I would advise my peers to just focus on what they're told to do on their schoolwork, because at the end of the day, we're the future of tomorrow, and these things depend on us.
Okay, that's very, very intelligent of you.
I personally think that our young generation they just have to be aware, you know. As long as you are aware, then no harmful practice it's not that easy for a perpetrator to come onto you because you are aware of it. So I think raising awareness is basically the important stuff. And of course, one would say, what will a 15-year-old learn from another 15-year-old? But you would learn a lot because we don't think the same, we don't have the same mindset. So I think young people can also just help one another in spreading awareness about these harmful practices.
Okay.
I would say let's speak about these topics. They are indeed very pivotal, and the more we know about them, the more we are aware about them, like Joyce spoke earlier. And we should also focus more on the root causes rather than the issue, and also not only looking at the solutions to solving the problem, but look at the root cause of the problem. Thank you.
Oh, that is... Okay, you may add on it, Joyce, yes.
She's 100% right that now in most cases we just focus on the victims of these harmful practices and then we neglect the perpetrators. You know, we need to know what triggered the perpetrator to do what they did, and we of course need to look into it so that at the end of the day we come up with possible implementations on that.
Okay, so you feel that it's not just important to just rather attend to the victim and so forth, but rather to go to the root of it.
Yes.
To figure out why are these people doing what they're doing,
Yes.
And how can we help them overcome or rather not have such evil thoughts.
Yes.
Okay, so we welcome in studio rather telephonically Ms. Donata Shivoro. Welcome.
Thank you.
So Ms. Donata, could you kindly tell us what is the theme of this year's Day of the African Child, and just briefly discuss some of the Namibian child's rights?
This year, the theme is eliminating harmful practice affecting children, which is a progress of policy and practice since 2013. We would want to see what we do as a country to eliminate those harmful practices. When we talk about the rights of children, children have the right to go to education. So every child in Namibia should participate in education. And children also have the right to shelter. They need to have an amicable place to stay. Is it? And then the other thing, the rights of the children also have responsibility, you know, to look after themselves, to report when cases are done to them, like abuse, they need to report it to the relevant authorities. When we talk to relevant authorities, we are talking about police, social workers, we're talking about teachers, they are teachers at school, nurses or doctors, or everywhere they find themselves, they can talk to, or any person that they trust. They have this responsibility. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Ivora. And would like to know as well, in your opinion, what are some of the harmful social and cultural practices affecting children in our society today?
Today we have the biggest one is the challenge that we are mostly trying to eliminate or to address is child marriage. Child marriage where the children are forced to find themselves in marriage is really a harmful practice that are still existing in other culture in Namibia. And we are looking at teenage pregnancy, you know. A child can be pregnant at the age of 11. You know, how bad it is, you know, and then if we look at the physical abuse, all those practices that the child must be beaten in order to follow the order. All those type of things we do not want it to happen in Namibia and we would want to eliminate them. Thank you.
Thank you very much once again. So in regards, when we talk about the harmful practices as well, so what strides have we taken in regards to bettering the quality of the life of the Namibian child?
In Namibia specific, we have a lot of policies and regulation that we are also follow, but particularly I can talk about the Child Protection Act, which is number 3 of 2015. This act has highlighted many issues that we need to address, and it's really making it a mandatory to many professionals to report any abuse of the child, and they can be prosecuted. So this act has really pointed out, and it's very clear that we do not want children to suffer abuse anymore, and we can prosecute people who do not even report if they were aware. You see, these are the type of the things that we have really tried to let as a government in Namibia. Thank you.
So in regards, you touched on child marriages and gender abuse. So with a high number of rape and GBV to the African child, what measures in particular or what possible measures can our society and government implement in order to curb this upsurge of the crimes towards children?
Yeah, first of all, we try to have awareness. You see, but the social worker in the region, everywhere they are doing awareness so that the children can be aware. What are these abuse? Because sometimes the children do not know what is happening to them if it is an abuse. So we need to carry an awareness to teach our children and everybody to say, if something like this happens, we should report it. And that's why I have said that the CCPA have stipulated some professional like nurses, doctors, private social workers, physiotherapists, pastors, and then traditionally that as a mandatory to report cases of that nature because of those rape and abuse has been escalating in the country. But we need to report it. I think it's where we have really touched it and we are really doing very well as a country. Thank you.
So as a follow-up to my previous questions, I'd just like to ask, with the unsolved murders of like these young children and the disappearances of a lot of children that have yet to be tracked, could one say that we as a society need to do more in order to protect our children and perhaps go back to the it takes a village to raise a child mentality?
Yes, it's really a big thing. We really need to go back to that. You see, as long as I can say that about the CCP and the child care protection, it's really supporting that. That's why it's making it mandatory for everybody, even for the community member to report. Although the community members are not done as a mandatory, they were there to urge to report cases. In the ones that are asked to report, it's the same that if you see a child also not doing well as a community member, say something about it. We should not just let it to be like that. You see a child moving around alone, and you cannot even ask a child, how are you? Where are you going? Where are you coming from? You see, in that way, we are telling us to say, it's taking a village to raise a child. I think we really need to go back to that, and I think it's where we are as a government, because we are working also together with our stakeholders, so that we can eliminate all these harmful practices for the children.
Ms. Donata, thank you very much for participating in our conversation and making time to join in.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'm greeting from Kavango, where we have our National Day of an African Child. It went well, all the children really participated, and they are really looking forward to eliminating these harmful practices from the culture, from cultural perspective.
That is indeed wonderful to hear, Ms. Donata. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Right.
So coming back in studio, Ms. Donata touched a lot about the community coming around in order to protect each and every child, not just your own. So if you do see something that you might consider wrong, or you do see a child that you might say is in an unsafe situation, do something about it. Don't just wait for your neighbor to do or say something in regards to that child. So once again, I would like to say that you can interact with us in studio by calling in on the number 061 400 397. Or you could also catch us on YouTube on MICT-Namibia and Facebook at the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology Namibia. So coming back in studio, I'd just like to ask, in regards to awareness, what type of awareness campaigns and so forth do you have at your schools, or have you participated in at your different schools? Have there been any awareness campaigns, or do people come and talk to you about such things and how to avoid them?
We've had. We would basically just maybe donate food or clothes to people who are in need and walk around with them.
Okay, so that creates awareness that there are people out there who are in need of help, that no matter what your circumstances, always help your fellow neighbor.
Yes.
I think that goes back to it takes a village to raise a child, basically. So any other awarenesses, Ms. Christofina?
Well, at my school, as a subject in life skills, we've spoken about sexual harassment, raising awareness. We've spoken about gender-based violence. It's also raising awareness. And also to add on to the question you asked on recommendations to the government that I think are pivotal to make it a better place for the African child, I think we should look further into policies regarding corporal punishment in schools or any educational facilities, because at some point corporal punishment is a harmful effect on the African child. And also, we should accommodate a stronger protection policy for victims who have gone through any harmful practices affecting them, such as rape, female genital mutilation, and child marriage. And also, as the government, you can provide more platforms like this, not only on African Child Day, but on any day, just to speak about the harmful effects and the consequences they have on every African child.
Okay.
Thank you.
And adding to what she has said, another recommendation is that what I agree with is the sex offender list that has been going around. You know, I agree with that because at the end of the day, when you hire somebody, you don't always know everything about them. So you're hiring somebody to work with kids and you don't know nothing about them, and maybe this person has been a sex offender. So I think that it's right to have this sex offenders list, because now when you go look for a job, the one that's hiring, you know, you'll be able to tell that no, this person can't work with kids because this person has been a rapist or a sex offender, you know. And this with what Ms. Donata said, she said that it takes a community or a village to raise a child. I definitely agree with that, because at the end of the day, even me as the child will be so embarrassed or ashamed to do something that is inappropriate in the community, because I know that no, my neighbors will see me, they'll go report me to my parents. And as the community, since we said that most harmful practices are committed by people that we know, right?
Yes.
Or family members. So people in the community will also just be scared to do harmful practices to children or to somebody else, because then they know that no, the community is together in raising a child.
Okay, that's very insightful. So, like putting together what you said about corporal punishment and the sex offender list, do you feel that there's enough awareness amongst the youth as to where they can go in order to receive help? Should they have any of these grievances, for example? And not just only police, but in the community itself. Do you think there's enough awareness as to if it happens to me, I know that I can go talk to the principal or talk to my mother? Are these avenues open, or are you comfortable to even take those avenues?
Well, there is enough awareness, in my opinion. Like I mentioned earlier, in school, we are being taught about it in a subject which is life skills. They teach us about everything that's happening, whether you're sexually offended or whatnot. Another thing is, since we are speaking about teenagers here, we know that the world is slowly becoming digitalized and that everything is becoming technology advanced. I'd say they should raise more awareness online rather than physically on posters and stuff. But we should also consider the child in a rural area by availing more posters, not only in on clinics, but also in every classroom. Thank you.
Okay, so you feel they are not inclusive enough. They should tailor-make everything according to the needs of the different children and so forth.
Most definitely.
Okay, that's understandable. Yes, Ms. Joyce?
I think that these topics should also be brought up in parent meetings, because at the end of the day, we do have to involve the parents. I mean, I'll hear something at a literacy program and come and try to explain to my parent, but they would better understand it hearing it from another adult and not from a child. So I think it should become a topic when it comes to school meetings.
Okay, and I'd just like to ask, do all of you have life skills at your specific schools?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So, like regarding the disconnect between parents, do you think it's more of not just a digital divide, I would say, more of the eras you grew up in, like what you touched on, Joyce, as well. The problems they had are not necessarily the problems that the youth of today are experiencing. So it creates this non-understanding. So like, for example, you go to your mom and explain what they said at school, but she just does not understand you. Like what you said, perhaps it would be better for another adult to convey the message, for example.
Yes, it seems so. I think it is like that because, you know, I will be told that physical abuse is wrong, right? Now, I do something wrong at home and my dad beats me up in a bad manner, you know, and I tell him that, no, I'm going to report you to the police if you do this the next time. And of course, as an African dad or as an African parent, he will tell you that if you're going to report me to the police, then as well go sleep at the police house. You see, that's the difference that's between our generation and our parents.
So I do understand you, and I do feel that you're very correct. In order to bridge a lot of the problems that we are experiencing, there needs to be a middle ground, so to say, between the older generation and the younger generation, where they somehow meet halfway, where they understand that those practices that were okay back then are not okay now. And that's why I feel like Day of the African Child is actually very, very important, because it highlights the child's rights that were not necessarily enjoyed in the past. So that being said, do you have anything else you'd like to share?
Yes.
No, do continue, Ms. Joyce.
So I think that parents should just stop being stubborn. They should really stop being stubborn and just snap out of their generation, because at the end of the day, time is moving and everything is changing. What we are going through is not the same that they are going through. Technology is becoming wiser and everything. So I think that our parents should just try to make a connection between their children, you know, and as they're doing that, they should also consider raising another person's child. You know, don't just focus on raising on your child, seeing the wrong stuff that your child does, and you're able to correct your child, but you're not able to correct another person's child. I mean, if you really want to be a parent, try to communicate more with the youth. They should try to understand us. And now, my encouragement to the youth, to the children now, I think they should just be disciplined, and they should try to make their parents understand as well, of course, because sometimes it's really hard, especially for considering children who are in rural areas. It's really hard. But now I think that children should also just stand out because as per Act 9 of the African Charter and the welfare of the rights of the child, it states that every child shall have the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. So our parents should also consider that, because if they don't consider that, then it means that our rights are being neglected, and us as children, we are not enjoying them. So I think that our voices do deserve to be heard. We are in this generation, and I think that some parents just pass on these harmful practices, basically because they feel like it's tradition, it should be passed on, but then they need to snap out of it. And I also feel like some of them do it because maybe it was hurtful to them, and they feel like, no, my child should also go through this and go through the pain I went through, because they want somebody to go through the same shoes that they wear. And it's just not the case, it's not supposed to be like that. That's why certain implementations have to be acted upon.
Okay. So Kasai, regarding harmful cultural practices, for example, passing on damaging practices, for example, corporal punishment, beating your kids, not listening to your kids, how do you think, or what would you advise parents in order for them to start engaging with their kids?
I would advise the parents to talk more to their children, understand their children, and get a bit more involved with their life. I'm not saying go through their private stuff, but just get to know the child a bit more so you can understand them and know how to deal with them.
Okay, so you feel comfortable. How can I ask this? What would you advise, for example, a child on how to approach their parents, for example, in a comfortable manner, in order to approach them with this problem that they might have?
I think the child shouldn't be afraid of their parents. Just approach them calmly and ask them what they should.
Christofina, any?
Yes, I'd say today is a day to actually sympathize to all the problems we share, not only in Africa but globally. And together as an individual, a society, a nation, and a continent, we can make a better Africa for the next generation, for the children. And I'd also like to show gratitude to the government for the policies they've implemented. I mean, they've made much effort to their fullest of potential, so I definitely appreciate them for it.
Okay. So that being said, are any of you older siblings, or do you have younger siblings?
I'm an older sibling.
So you two are older and you're younger. So
I
what
have
advice?
younger siblings.
You're the youngest?
No, I have younger siblings.
Oh, okay. So what advice or tips do you pass on to your younger siblings according to what you are currently learning or what you've gone through? Do you have that bond where you pass on knowledge for them?
So,
Still too young.
I would say if you're making mistakes, make good mistakes, most definitely. Another thing is be open. If you want to talk, I'm always there. I'm your big sis.
Okay, that's wonderful to hear.
I just advise them to develop a culture of reporting. I mean, they should be comfortable to report once they notice that something is not right, They should stand out. They should report certain issues. Okay. They should be aware, of course.
I'd also say deliberate dogmatism. Not always what people think about you matters.
Yes. Okay, that's quite deep. So, Christofina, you had touched on corporal punishment. So, corporal punishment has been banned in most schools, as we know. Do you feel like that corporal punishment was a harmful practice?
I'd say corporal punishment does have optimistic and pessimistic effects, but if we have to look at it on a fair amount, we'd say more of the effects are pessimistic. So yeah, corporal punishment does have positive effects, but it weighs more on the negative effects.
Okay.
Yes.
And Joyce?
Because adding to what she said, at the end of the day, a child, it depends on the mindset, right? I mean, there's somebody who would listen more if they are spoken to, and there's somebody who needs the punishment. But it doesn't have to be corporal, because at the end of the day, I can get beaten up at school, for instance, badly, and I decide that I will stop going to school, which is negative, because it's a negative effect, because now I stop going to school, so it's affecting my future and my education currently. So I think it had negative effects on children.
On children.
I'd also like to add on.
Okay.
When we look at corporal punishment, we should also consider that corporal punishment doesn't only affect the child physically, it also affects them mentally. So when you look at it again, mentally it does have a lot of pessimistic effects, depending on how the child accepts it.
Okay. So what was your guys' stance when you were reading comments of parents saying that now that corporal punishment is abolished, that our kids are going to act amok, there's going to be no discipline, they don't listen, they go to school with whatever hairstyles or however they want to dress. Have you, being schoolgoers, seen this effect? Or is this just something that is imagined by parents as to why corporal punishment are needed to be kept?
Like I mentioned earlier, it depends on the child's mentality. How do they accept corporal punishment and how do they accept it not being there? Are they going to take advantage of it and be a mean child, or are they going to take advantage of it and make a good out of it? Basically, that's it.
Okay.
Yes, and I think most importantly, it's how our parents are raising us. Because charity does start at home, so yeah.
And Kasai, have you seen any difference in behavior when it comes, for example, to your fellow schoolmates, or did you just never have had corporal punishment?
Actually, the child starts to be more shy of the teacher and starts to be more hateful against their teacher. Doesn't want to talk to them, or sometimes even bunks the classes of the teacher.
So you haven't seen any students deciding that because the teacher cannot discipline me, I can do whatever I want to do and talk however I want to talk to the teacher?
Sometimes, yes.
Like I mentioned, they take advantage and decide what to do with it. So they either do bad stuff with it and be mean and disrespectful, or be obedient.
But at the end of the day, I think it's good that corporal punishment was taken away, because it does depend on the mindset. Because at the end of the day, if I am punished brutally, I can decide on passing it on to somebody else, or I take it that it's the right thing to do and I'll be doing it to others.
Okay.
So just to add on, corporal punishment doesn't discipline the child, it just makes the child more scared of their teacher.
Okay.
worse.
So how would you suggest how would you suggest that teachers get these kids in line?
Let's talk.
Kasai, you also feel the same?
Yes.
Because, certain older students can have a certain, I'm older, nobody can tell me anything.
I say sometimes actions speak louder than words, so body language is imperative.
Okay.
And sometimes I think you just have to talk to the person. I mean, sit with the person and ask, what is wrong? Tell me. Because sometimes it's maybe what's going on at home that is causing this child to behave in a certain behavior. You never know what they're going through. But I think that talking is really important. It plays a very big role in a child's life, They will be able to relate. Especially you as a parent talking to me, just calling me and saying that, no, I've noticed this and this. Talk to me. What is wrong? I mean, we have to talk.
Okay. So talking is quite vital, I do understand that. But let me put it in this instance where I play devil's advocate. So Kasai, you are a teacher now.
Yes.
And you have a certain student who's just constantly misbehaving, disrupting the whole study of the whole group. You approach him and you say, let's talk. What's wrong? Is there any way I can help you? You do that continuously. You try to open those communication gates, and it's just not working.
I would advise them to maybe visit the child's peers or the child's parents and ask them, is anything wrong with your child? Or even the child's siblings, just to see if there's anything going on.
Oh, that's a very good answer. So any last words that you guys would like to put out there to your fellow youths? Any advice and so forth?
Actually, I'd like to appeal to the government.
Okay, as well. You can do that as well.
Yes.
Any last thoughts, any last messages that you would like to convey?
In my concluding remarks, I'd like to appeal to the government to do more to eliminate harmful social and cultural practices that affect us children. I would also like to appeal to all stakeholders to assist governments where necessary to ensure that the education we receive is that we are.
No, it's totally fine. Continue. No,
I
no,
would
Kasa,
like
it's
to
fine.
appeal to
Yes.
all stakeholders to make sure that we are sufficiently educated and we are well informed about the affairs affecting us children in Africa.
Okay, thank you very much. Christofina?
I would like to say thank you for this opportunity, for giving me a voice, and I'd also just like to say thank you for your effort, and I'd also like to say thank you to all relevant stakeholders for all the effort they've put into eliminating harmful practices against children. Maybe just work a bit more on the policies as well.
Okay. Any advice on what in particular about the policies?
For example, corporal punishment and then the victims.
Okay. Joyce, last words? Quick wrap up?
I would just like to say again, once again, that children should develop a culture of reporting, and they should be aware. I mean, they should keep themselves aware, and I think that parents should really just understand that our generation is different from theirs.
Okay, thank you so much for your input today. It was quite insightful hearing all these voices from these children and all their opinions. So once again, I'm your host, Angela Situmbeko, and from that technical team and I at the Government Information Center, have a good day, Namibia.